Welcome back to Keeping BZ, the podcast-like show where Zach and I show and tell each other a video game to necessitate the fact that we have to listen to each other. This, by Cranky Pants Games, is... Once we get past every single logo and who catered the game and who rubbed its shoulders. We have Evil Dead Regeneration, released for the PS2 and Xbox, and as well as PC. We're doing the PS2 version here. Why are we doing Evil Dead? Well, because Zach and I recently went through the full trilogy of the original Evil Dead films, from Evil Dead to Army of Darkness, and Zach and I recently watched the first two seasons of Ash vs. Evil Dead. So I wanted to take a look at one of the more underrated classic Evil Dead video games, as well as talk about the franchise and our experiences with it in general. So, Regeneration is very interesting because the prior two games, Evil Dead Hail to the King and Evil Dead Fistful of Boomstick, acted as sequels to Army of Darkness. Hail to the King followed about a decade after Army of Darkness, and then Fistful of Boomstick took place like a little ways after Hail to the King. This game, Degeneration, goes, hey, what if Ash never went to medieval times at the end of Evil Dead 2, and instead he was placed in an insane asylum for, telling his story as to what happened in the cabin in Evil Dead 2. And so everything keeps to the real world in this, and it's this strange kind of alternate narrative to the Evil Dead lore. And Zach's watched a little bit of some of the prior games, like Hail to the King, but something you'll begin to notice very quickly is how much love is put into Degeneration that clearly was made by people that love the franchise. So the opening of this game is us playing through our tutorial. Is the most iconic scene, arguably the most iconic scene from Evil Dead 2. Yep, we got our Deadites now. Basically, you have the classic chainsaw and the sawed-off shotgun, but the difference here is that these weapons, unlike in prior Evil Dead games, they don't have any ammo. You can use the chainsaw and the shotgun as much as you want, whereas in prior games it was more kind of survival horror-y, where you'd have to find ammo everywhere. So yeah, Zach, here we go. We're actually just recreating this scene from Evil Dead 2 in the game's engine.
Please tell me he does the crouchy thing.
Don't worry, he does.
Yes, it's very important.
But we get to shoot and destroy all these things as part of our, our weapon targeting tutorial. So, Zach, what was your first experience with the Evil Dead franchise that you can remember?
It was definitely Evil Dead 2. I can't remember what made me so interested in it. I've talked before about my disinterest in horror, despite the fact that I'm the one that usually picks the horror games for the BZs recently. But for the most part, I'm not really a great fan. Like, I usually avoid horror. But something about Evil Dead 2 stuck out to me. I can't remember specifically what. I think I must have heard somewhere that it was a horror comedy. And I don't like horror, but I really like comedy. And it sounded like an interesting combination. So I ended up checking it out, and I really liked it. And then I saw Army of Darkness and enjoyed that, but I enjoyed Evil Dead 2 more. And I never saw the first one. And then I discovered Ash vs. Evil Dead back when it was on Netflix, back when we didn't have 60 streaming services. And I really, really liked Ash vs. Evil Dead, really liked it. But unfortunately ended up stopping halfway through Season 3, and I don't remember why. So it'll be nice to finally finish that once Brandon and I get to it.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how they cap off the show.
Holy shit, this looks 1,000 times better than Hail to the King.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I haven't got to a point in the game yet where Evil Ash comes back as a mechanic. But yeah, we're playing as Evil Ash from Evil Dead 2, and he just can brutalize enemies in seconds. The only thing I will say, I mean, the combat can get repetitive in Regeneration, because you are just kind of doing, like, you eventually get access to a full combo system where you have a ton of different moves you can use. But it still ultimately is kind of the same thing. Like, you're just, you know, you shoot enemies, you hit them with your chainsaw. When they turn green, you hit the finisher button. Or you can just keep hitting them until they come apart into pieces. But later on, we'll get a taste of it at the end of this video. But we do get a new mechanic that does add at least a little bit of variety to the combat. But I still think this is ultimately still better and far more satisfying than any of the gameplay in Hail to the King or Fistful of Boomstick. It feels far more satisfying. It feels more like the action in the films. And as you can see, Zach, already, like from me you're watching, the presentation of this game captures the vibe of the movies very well. Like earlier when we saw the Evil Dead camera swoop inside the cabin and slam Ash outside of it in a way that felt like just on point.
I will say one positive about Hail to the King is that I think that one was also made by Evil Dead fans. When you're first in the cabin, there's actually animated shadows despite it being a pre-rendered background, which is really, really neat. I think if that game's combat wasn't just so awful, that game could have at least been mediocre, enjoyable if you're an Evil Dead fan, but not worth it for anyone else.
Right. Here's where Regeneration deviates from Evil Dead continuity. Ash is now locked up in an asylum, like I said. And so here, I will apologize. This particular cutscene is both very long, and it also stutters a lot on the way I was playing this game. I don't know why that is, because all other cutscenes in gameplay after this cutscene is over run fine.
But how did you...
It might just be because this is a long cutscene with a lot of particle effects and moving parts and stuff going on, as we'll see later into it.
Dr. Reinhardt's office?
So yes, Dr. Reinhardt will become our kind of villain this time around. Once again, Zach, he's kind of like an evil scientist that's trying to use the Necronomicon for his own means. He's also the head of the hospital.
I have to get to the authorities before Reinhardt realizes this book is missing.
Hey, I just wanted to say... thanks for believing in me.
I think Bruce Campbell sounds pretty decent in this game. It kind of depends on the line read. Occasionally, he's a little too wooden for what the line needs. But most of the time, he's actually pretty good.
You know, I bet you'd be some
Does
kind
this
of
game
a
also
knockout
have a
that
taunt
traded
button?
into Granny wear
Hail
for
to the King had a
thigh-high
taunt
stockings and
button.
a bra that pushed up your yams.
Unfortunately, no.
All Bruce Campbell games need a one-liner button.
Oh, baby smooth, Ashenova.
If I remember right, X is jump, circle is like your right-handed weapon, square is your left-handed weapon, triangle's your finisher button. And then what were the shoulders? They were more just kind of like aiming and blocking, and then an alternate shoot button, that kind of thing. Yeah, this shot is really ambitious. I love this.
Yeah, this is cool.
All done in the game's engine. Yeah, if you missed that there, the nurse with the police officer, she says to the officer, "May I touch your nightstick?" And here's our villain, Dr. Reinhardt. Another good-looking character model.
Craftsmanship.
Yeah, presentation's great.
So diabolically
Yeah, like that's the
beautiful.
thing. Like this game didn't get awful reviews. It kind of got very average reviews, and I don't really see it because the love in this game is off the charts. This is Cranky Pants Games, who only really made a couple games to their name. They were another like developer under THQ. And the only other game that's super notable that they worked on was actually Destroy All Humans: Path of the Furon, which was the Destroy All Humans game released for the 360 that is rather infamous in the ways it was rushed to market very quickly and was a barely functional game. And that was the game that was the death of their whole company.
I'm just sorry that my experiments on you proved fatal.
As far as I can tell, this is Cranky Pants Games' most successful project. But it looks like they actually got time to finish it, so that's probably why.
It's amazing what game developers can do when they're, not crunched.
Yep.
Also, I can tell what era this was made because there's an Evil Ash mode. What was it with PS2 games in Evil Character mode?
I'm not sure. It was a reoccurring gimmick. You got, in Prince of Persia, the Two Towers, there's an evil prince you can turn into. Then in... Two Towers. I think I meant to say, what is it? Is the Twin Cities or the Twin Towers or something like that? I don't want to say Twin Towers.
I thought it was Two Warriors.
No, you're thinking of Warrior Within, the second game.
Oh.
So there's that, and then, when you got Jak and Daxter, Jak 2, of course, infamously has that evil Jak mode. And then you get like a light Jak mode at Jak 3.
Oh, the Two Thrones?
Yeah, the Two Thrones is what I was thinking of. But you're right, though. For some reason, evil versions were just the norm. And then Kratos, he doesn't need an evil form because he's Kratos.
I had a very famous example, and it slipped my mind while I was looking it up. While I was looking up the Prince of Persia game. There's Double Trigger. I wouldn't really consider that evil, though.
Sure.
Werehog, I guess, is halfway evil. It doesn't turn Sonic evil, but...
Yeah.
I gotta get out of here.
It's a monstrous form that does scare people.
Yeah. Makes Jason Griffith speak with a little bit more of a growl.
Right. And even though we don't have our chainsaw at this point, Zach, he just has like the little nub. It still can do melee damage. You can still knock enemies into the air with your stub, which I don't understand. Yep, we got a bunch of little scripted events going on as we explore the asylum. And don't worry, Ash has plenty of one-liners that thankfully aren't just repeats of his lines from the movies.
Let's see if these freaks are still allergic to lead.
Yep.
It is a shame Hail to the King is so bad. I think, even though they're not my genre, I think a RE clone Evil Dead game wasn't a terrible idea. I think it really could have worked.
Yeah, I think there's probably some universe where you could remaster that game and probably just retune the combat system and you'd probably have something a lot better.
There we go.
Well, if I remember in that game, you kind of just, the main villain is just evil Ash from Army of Darkness again, and then you fight him and that's the end.
This is for my slain brothers.
Are expected to service their own defense. We will not take crap from you. And remember, nobody cares about you like...
But thankfully this game, it goes in and it comes up with its own villains and its own mythology in a way that I find very satisfying as a real sequel to the franchise instead of just copying things from the nostalgia of the earlier films.
I think it's fine for a licensed game to have fan service, because it's probably what you're playing the game for, of course, but I wouldn't want the game to just be only references to things, unless it's based on the movie, of course. If it's an actual Army of Darkness or Evil 2 game, it's one thing. But for something like this, where it's supposed to be a sequel, I wouldn't want it to just retread old ground.
Right.
I wanted to come up with new ideas and expand the lore and world. That's something Ash vs. Evil Dead does very, very well.
are strange ritual save points. Oh yeah, I like that kind of touch. Like to me, the doors and the environment screwing with you and closing things off. I mean, many games do this because they want to wall things off and then the combat arena begins. But here, to me, it makes way more sense because the environment screwing with you is specifically an Evil Dead thing. I love this. Watch this. So, the evil, of course, kills this guy. And then, look at this. And now we have to fight possessed furniture like this is Alan Wake or something.
Have a seat, Ash.
Yeah, there's no ammo. Like, you have unlimited ammo, but there is, like, a small point where Ash will reload his pistol that you can look out for. Not that he really takes that long to reload it. So you would say that overall Evil Dead 2 is still your favorite of the franchise?
Yeah, Army of Darkness is a lot of fun. I think I just didn't... It's definitely a higher production movie, for sure. But I really like the setting of the cabin in Evil Dead 2. And I like all the wacky, what the fuck am I watching moments. Like, for example, the deer head we saw earlier. I love that moment. Evil Dead 1, I think, is still a good movie, but that one leans more into horror and atmosphere. And I think it does a good job of it. But again, I have a petty, not dislike. It's not as much of a dislike as it used to be. I used to be very intolerant of horror. Now it's more disinterest than it is a massive dislike. But still, I could recognize Evil Dead 1 was a good movie. Just not really what I was looking for in Evil Dead.
Whoa. Right. Yeah, I mean, 2 is kind of what established the franchise's identity in general, while 1 was the movie that kind of made it, gave it the legs to eventually become Evil Dead 2. No, I mean, I think it's a pretty decently solid trilogy for what it is. I think there are small sections of Army of Darkness that do drag a little bit, but I still think it's the entertainment value of that film's ridiculous cartoonishness is that basically sells itself on its own. It's funny because Evil Dead 2, I would agree, is the best film of the 3 in terms of pacing and entertainment value and visuals and creativity. It's also the movie with the least amount of story or plot or real character out of any of the 3. Yet, it's the movie that I find to be the far more interesting of the 3 because of how it just kind of is very much a, look, I got all this money and I'm going to do whatever I want with it. So this movie is just scene after scene of insane cartoon gore and violence and strange imagery without any real connective tissue. And that is until we get like the book and start trying to put the evil away. And while I did enjoy the giant, battle set piece at the end of Army of Darkness, admittedly, to me, it's not quite as impactful or as impressive as the little, the embodiment of evil itself trying to squeeze its head through the door of the cabin.
Army of Darkness feels more Hollywood than Evil Dead 1 and 2 do,
yeah.
If I could put it in one way. Yeah, normally I don't really like the kinds of films where there's not really a plot structure and it's just sort of things happening. Usually that bores me, but there's something about Evil Dead 2 that, you're right, there's really not much plot or character. No one really has an arc or anything going on. It's just, hey, Ash is here in this cabin and the evil just fucks with him the whole time. But there's something about the cabin that's such a cool setting. The way the evil messes with the environment, the special effects are amazing. The gore, of course, is fantastic. There's just a lot of fun creativity and a really good, consistent energy in Evil Dead 2. But I would say it keeps that energy without it ever feeling like too much.
Right. Yeah, and I would say that Ash vs. Evil Dead, out of any of the movies, I actually think Ash vs. Evil Dead is the best tonal combination of all the elements of the films. They found that right kind of balance of making it, still having genuine moments of horror in that show, as well as some of the over-the-top gore and action you expect, and then even some of the goofy cartoonishness of something like Army of Darkness, like when Ash goes into a morgue and gets his head, and then has a possessed creature, like, have Ash shove his head up inside the creature's ass. And he's just like going, oh, this is disgusting, like the whole time. And it's just like, it's almost like a weird combination of some of the tones from Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. And also just like character stuff. Like, I mean, because it's a show, Ash vs. Evil Dead easily has the most developed and interesting characters out of any of the other parts of the franchise.
Yeah, Ash vs. Evil Dead does a great job of taking what barely any plot any of the 3 movies had and trying to turn it into something really genuine. It's great. It's got great comedy moments, but there's some, I would never say it's scary, but there's some really good tension, some really good horror moments, along with just, I would say one way to describe Evil Dead 2 and then moments of Ash vs. Evil Dead is, horror Looney Tunes, kind of.
Yeah.
Hold on, there's got to be a way through here.
Electrified water. How shocking.
Oh, come on, Bruce. You can do better than
Guess
that.
this guy ordered extra crispy. Hey, Bub.
What did this guy do? Or maybe he's just a corpse.
That'll work.
I fully expected that corpse to get up.
Yeah, same. But, well, actually, now that I think about it, well, I guess we'll see in a bit, but I need to check to make sure it's the same thing. Yeah, I played basically up until the end of the Asylum and a little into the next section of the game. And that's as far as I have personally played Evil Dead Regeneration, but I would actually like to go through and beat this game, because I do really like it.
Patient possessions? Come on, where are you? Hey, dude.
Now we're getting all our stuff back. We gotta do the classic Evil Dead shots of him getting equipped and ready to go.
Say the line, Ash.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Sing for the king.
Hey, you know what? That one's good, too.
Let's see what you got.
All right, and now we get access to our actual full combo system. I think I go into the menu here in a sec, just to look at it. Yeah. So some of these moves are still locked until we get further into the game, but primarily we have, we have our finisher blows. We have like those kind of Devil May Cry type combos where you pause in the middle of a combo and then hit the button again. And each one usually will have some type of finisher you can do either with a jump or with a chainsaw or with a shotgun. You have a really nice charge up attack that just plows through enemies. You have a really useful area of effect move where you just spin your chainsaw in a circle. I haven't used counterattack that much because I don't really block that often, even though I should be, so I don't lose too much health. Because I think this game's difficulty is actually quite balanced, where if you're screwing around too much trying to figure out your combos, the enemies will just screw you up like they are right now, to me.
Is that the best you got?
That's little animations of them popping out of their little beds in the morgue as you defeat more of them. Yeah, like, I would be interested in seeing a modern Evil Dead game just to see what they would do with modern technology. I mean, you look at how much there's, like, physics and stuff going on here in Regeneration. But yeah, I mean, you know, Evil Dead's an older franchise. You know, Ash vs. Evil Dead, you know, was already over before the turn of this decade. So what could they really do with it now outside of, because these days what we have is Evil Dead Rise, and of course we got Evil Dead Burn and Wrath coming next year, and Burn comes out, I believe, next month. And those, I have not seen Evil Dead Rise yet, but I know that it's very much kind of like a not even so much a reboot, just kind of it's kind of its own thing. Doesn't have Ash, doesn't have any of that Evil Dead stuff, but it has a similar tone, and the enemies in the movie are Deadites. So the franchise's identity at this point, I think, is just that kind of over-the-top gore and violence and horror with a little bit of, like, dark comedy in there. Because, I mean, so Bruce Campbell did say he wanted to retire after Ash vs. Evil Dead finished, but I have heard him say that, you know, if Sam Raimi is attached, he'll come back and he will do more if he's asked to. I mean, I've recently played the Retro Realms Ash vs. Evil Dead game that they also combine with their Halloween game, and that's mainly just like a retro 16-bit inspired action game where you're running around taking out enemies. There's no voice acting or anything, but there is dialogue that is making references to various parts of Evil Dead lore. But I would like to see a new game that has an older Bruce Campbell or something in the lead role, and having Bruce come back to do more Ash voiceover. This is ominous. But we can just walk out, right?
Huh.
Nope.
No exit? No problem. Let's go.
So this part's pretty tough, because you have just a crowd coming at you here.
Time to perish.
So, Zach, as somebody that's only really seen the original trilogy, how would you feel about watching the later films in the Evil Dead franchise, knowing that Ash is no longer a part of the series? Like, Bruce, will produce some of the later films, but he doesn't act in any of them. But they still retain that kind of specific Evil Dead kind of atmosphere and tone.
I suppose I could give them a shot. I actually was kind of worried that they weren't going to have the tone. I thought they were just going to turn more, like, take the Deadites but make them more scary, remove a lot of the Looney Tunesy aspects. But if they keep the dark comedy aspect, I guess I could give them a try.
Damn that.
Although my main interest was the original Evil Dead trilogy.
Yeah, I would say I'm a fan of the Evil Dead remake. It's been a while since I first watched it, but I remember actually liking a lot of how it kind of goes a little harder with the tone of the original. And when it's not just remaking scenes from the original, it's new stuff and it's new characters I actually found pretty likable. To the point where I've heard they even plan to bring back some of the leads into future Evil Dead films, though that has not really happened yet, as once again Rise kind of started over from scratch. Aside from that, Evil Dead has kind of spun off into various media. Of course, there's comic books. There's, of course, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, which I have not read but kind of want to read just to see how it goes. And there's been various comics that act as like sequels to like Army of Darkness and various movies in the franchise, filling in little gaps of Ash's character.
Office, Doc. Real modest.
So Dr. Reinhardt was, of course, not talking to us for real when we heard him over the announcements in the hospital. He was had a little tape recorder nearby, and he's escaped somewhere else with the Necronomicon.
Bingo.
I wouldn't say Ash is necessary for Evil Dead. I wouldn't mind seeing different leads with different personalities. It's more I like the weird mix of a screwball. Would it be screwball comedy? That's what I'm calling it. Screwball comedy and the Deadites, the horror aspect. I think it's what makes Evil Dead stick out to me. Although I know it's not the only a horror comedy, but I would say Evil Dead has its own very specific style of horror comedy.
Yeah. There is nothing you can quite compare to Evil Dead specifically, though there are many films that were clearly inspired by Evil Dead. I've always wanted to see the Peter Jackson film Dead Alive, which is known for having just excessive, extreme amounts of gore and just viscera and blood pumping at pretty much every minute of the movie in a way that to me does seem like almost like an extension or like Evil Dead turned up to 11 or something. Uh-oh. Yep. Here's our first boss, which I believe was actually... Yes, I think that actually was the guy on the table.
Yeah, I think
He's getting revenge. Yeah, I didn't realize we actually were setting that up earlier until now. But yeah, here's our first boss.
Conserve your energy, Static Cling, because you're going to need every stinking volt.
And he is actually a pretty well-designed boss fight. So when he's not conducting electricity, that's when we can actually do damage to him. When he is, he sends out a little shockwave, which then electrifies all the water around us. So we have to jump in between the platforms to get away from the electric water as well as him, because if we touch him while he's walking through the electrified water, he can take our entire health bar out in about 2 hits.
Ooh.
So we have to be very careful when he's in that form. Otherwise, he has other moves he does when he's electrified. Like right there, we saw he like set out little tiny evil electric minions that we can shoot with our gun. And then I think this will be when he starts shooting out some big waves of electricity that we have to kind of dodge in between. Yeah, here we go. These can be a little tough to dodge if you don't time it right. And then, yeah, once he uses himself up, we can do some more damage. And to me, this doesn't feel drawn... Like, you know, some people don't like it when bosses don't allow you to hit them until after you go through their pattern. But to me, this boss fight is quick enough that it doesn't really matter that much. And it's still... There's enough danger posed by how much damage he can do to you if he touches you that it doesn't really feel like it's, you know, too easy either. I think we got him right here. Yep. Yeah, really decently designed little boss fight that feels like a decent break from the swarms of enemies. And coming up, we actually have a pretty good Ash one-liner, or little, very goofy comedic Ash scene that we'll see here in a second.
For some reason, the opening of this game gives me vibes of The Suffering, and I don't know why.
It definitely has a similar vibe, especially with the enemy design.
What was that? You can't believe you just got your ass
Does The
kicked by
Suffering
a
also have an
nut
evil
job?
mode? I thought it did.
What? Oh, you think I'm your daddy? Listen up, Shake and Bake. I eat evil for breakfast and danger for dinner, so spread the word. Ash is back in business.
I like the facial animation.
Yeah, I think the model does a good job stylizing Bruce Campbell's looks while still looking like Bruce Campbell in a way that makes sense for a PS2 model. But yes, The Suffering, Zach, actually had multiple endings. Or really 2 different endings depending on your actions throughout the asylum. So yes, you do have an anger, like kind of evil mode in that game. And I believe also in its sequel, The Suffering Ties That Bind.
Nobi. What the?
So yes, Professor Nobi, the little ghost face that appeared in Evil Dead 2 for all of 30 seconds.
Spread through the world, corrupting all in its path. You must stop him.
Look, Nobes, let's get this straight. All I must do is get the hell out of here. Now where's the damn fire exit?
You can escape this sanitarium, but not the threat that Reinhardt poses. And neither can Sally.
Sally? My lawyer? What's she got to do with this?
Reinhardt needs my diary to complete his work, and he sent his evil minions to pursue her.
Damn, I mean, I know she's a lawyer, but she doesn't deserve that. I mean, sure, she's a little uptight and square, but I think there's something freaky-deaky going on there, too, you know what I'm saying? Well, she was trying to help me, so...
Yeah, they still are capturing... to me, it's
All
like
right, what do I need
this
to do?
kind of personality from Ash feels less like the movies and more like the character he becomes in Ash vs. Evil Dead. Where occasionally he just kind of says like weird or problematic things and the characters just
Okay,
like
got
look at him like, what the hell are your
To
problem?
do it alone.
No offense, Professor, but how do I put this? You're a big
Yeah, now
useless
that I think
ghost.
about it, he's not as much of a womanizer in the Evil Dead trilogy as he is in Ash versus. In Evil Dead 3, he kind of ends up...
He's a Deadite. End of story.
In Evil Dead 3, he ends up with that girl in the past,
Sam is spiritual.
but
Right.
he doesn't really flirt with her at the beginning, mostly because she throws a rock at him.
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2, he's dating Laura, but... And he, you know, he's romantic.
For
but,
all
you know,
of,
they're
for all of
dating.
2 scenes.
Yeah.
Well, in Evil Dead 1, it's probably, to me, that's where he is the most, like, he's a very respectful and, I wouldn't say he's like a feminist per se, but he is always very concerned with making sure his lover feels comfortable, and when he's, like, giving her the ring and all, well, not the ring, but the little, like, necklace he gives her, like, he comes off as, of him and his friend, he's the one that's actually being respectful towards women, and his friends doesn't really care and sees them all as objects. Whereas it feels like as his journey progresses in the Evil Dead movies, he becomes more kind of closed off. He just is so sick of this and doesn't want to deal with anything anymore, and people keep throwing him back into situations, and so, you know, not that he won't say no to a lady, but most of the time they're all kind of turned against him, or he expects them to turn into Deadites.
One thing I really like about Ash vs. Evil Dead is Ash is a goofy character, but he's also a tragic one.
Yeah.
He's just so used to everybody he loves dying and or turning into Deadites that he then has to chop up.
Yeah, when he loses his love at the end of the first season of Ash vs. Evil Dead, he doesn't really hesitate that much in taking her out. Like, he hesitates a little bit, but you can tell he's grown used to this unfortunate cycle in his life. But in this case, in Evil Dead Regeneration, we have a new partner character in the form of Sam. And this is what Sam does. We can do this to him.
Oh, it's a 3-pointer.
And we can do this to Sam. So Sam can
Oh, sorry,
infinitely
Runt, didn't see you
die with no repercussions. And you can actually use Sam as a weapon, as well as his AI will grab onto enemies and like rip their heads off. We have a little bit of some dialogue coming up here as they're kind of chatting.
Hey, who left the stove on? Know who this furnace reminds me of?
I have no idea.
Johnny Sticks. Him and me, we used to be connected.
Connected to what? The Union of Vertically Challenged Half-Deadites?
Ah, you know, connected. Me and Sticks, guy was thin as a toothpick. We were top earners.
I thought you were an ice cream truck driver.
I was a lot of things, you know, for cover. Me and Sticks used to pose as chimney sweeps, sneak in and out of furnace vents with the loot. Sticks must have put on a couple of pounds before the last job, because he got himself stuck. Furnace suddenly comes on and boom. Then,
And then you played pickup sticks, right?
I don't deserve sarcasm.
So a little bit of just like characterization building up here, and they have little conversations as you walk around. Oh, and also we killed him again.
I have a feeling you're going to be doing that a lot.
Yes. Yeah, this is kind of one of the main mechanics with Sam, is that he's supposed to be a little annoying, so you get to kick him around all the time.
Pull yourself together, Runt. You'll get over it.
I don't get it.
Yeah, they have a nice amount of banter, and later on, yeah, they just have more and more conversations that build a genuine kind of camaraderie between the two as they kind of understand each other more. So yeah, our next location, fittingly for Evil Dead, is a cemetery where we're going to have some new enemies showing up, but not new necessarily to the Evil Dead franchise, that is. Yep, we got some good old Army of Darkness skeletons.
If only they were the puppet skeletons. Those things were amazing.
Oh yeah, like the effects, like Army of Darkness was made just at that right point at the end of the 80s, where CGI hadn't quite come into its own yet, so you had just combinations of effects techniques. You would go from more far away shots that are stop motion to closer shots that are either like statues or puppets, to at times people in makeup made to look like skeletons. Like Army of Darkness is a Hollywood effects showcase of all kinds of effects techniques, as well as being an extremely over-the-top action film that allows those techniques to constantly be flourished and shown. Like when Ash is fighting that weird, like, witch lady down in that kind of, like, flooded area where those walls are closing in on him, and the witch lady suddenly switches to a stunt actor doing cartwheels and backflips, and then cuts back to the lady again as she explodes.
Oops, my bad. So what were you in a loony bin for anyways? Mania? Dementia? ADD? I was in for ADD. Did you say something? They usually don't put you in Sunny Meadows for something like that. But the shrink said I had a really bad case. I don't think it got bad, though. I mean, you'd never know it was just talking to me. Right?
Just shut up, okay?
So yeah, that's a good showing of Ash, Evil Dead Regeneration. I'm excited to play more of this game, and I hope if you played this back in the day, you have some nostalgia for it that is rekindled by this video. Please sound off in the comments. Maybe give us a like or a subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And if you want to see more Evil Dead games, I can show off Fistful of Boomstick. I could show off some of Evil Dead the game because I grabbed it off of PSN before it got delisted. And yeah, this was fun to chat about, and I hope you join us next time for whatever Zach chooses for our next episode of Keeping BZ. And take care. Have a good night.